Hello, dear friend. I'm 85 years old. I've lived a long, full life, rich with memories and love, and you might think at this age I'd be content, grateful for peace, quiet, and care. But I have a confession that surprises even me. I regret moving into this nursing home. I know, it sounds ungrateful. How could I possibly complain when I have kind people looking after me, feeding me, tucking me in? Honestly, I've asked myself that question many times. But I realize the answer is complicated. I'm not ungrateful for the care. I am grateful. The food is warm, the beds are clean, and they watch my heart every night. Yet every time I accept that love, a little ache reminds me of what it cost, my old life. Maybe you're here because you worry about an aging parent, or maybe this is your grandmother, or maybe even yourself hearing my story. Whoever you are, I appreciate your time. You're kind to listen. I have no visitor today, and just sharing these thoughts makes me feel less alone. So thank you. When I first arrived, I thought it would be peaceful, a sort of rest after all the turmoil. Last winter, I tripped on an icy step outside my home. After the fall and that scary night in the ER, my children gently said, "Mom, maybe consider a little help." I agreed. We packed up my home, 80 years of memories boxed up in a car, and drove here. I remember the sky that day, so clear and blue, and my grandchildren waving at the window. They weren't crying, they said, "Have fun, Grandma," with smiles. I told myself, we'll make the best of this. It's just temporary. But being here has been different than I imagined. I thought I'd relax, read books by the window, maybe even learn knitting again. Instead, I felt like I was on a different planet. Everything was new and a little cold, like walking into a stranger's house and pretending you're a guest. So here I am, thinking back on those first days, holding those memories close, and I realize I've learned some hard truths about living in a place like this. I realize it might seem strange for an old woman like me to speak so candidly. I don't mean to worry or scare anyone, I just want to be honest about how I feel. It's hard to open up about loneliness and regrets, but maybe someone out there needed to hear this as much as I needed to say it. You might notice a quiver in my voice or a tear in my eye. This is just part of the journey I'm on. I wanted you to see the heart behind the face, not just the frail figure. None of us usually talk about these feelings out loud. Maybe by speaking up tonight, I'm giving others permission to do the same. If just one person hears this and feels less alone, then talking was worth it. And so with this said, I will try to get some rest. Sleep soundly, dear friend. I never expected to speak so openly at my age, but I'm glad I did. We all have stories and lessons, and sharing them can bring us a bit closer. Thank you again for staying with me tonight. Hard truth 1. Losing my independence. The biggest shock was losing control over simple, everyday things. When I wake up now, there's someone calling my name or opening my curtains, even if I wasn't ready. At home, I would rise with the sun on my own time. I'd shuffle to the kitchen, brew some tea, and choose what I wanted to do first. Maybe water the garden, maybe watch the news quietly. Every choice was mine. Here, everything is on someone else's clock. I remember the first morning like it was a different lifetime. A nurse gently pulled back my curtain at 6:30 a.m. with a bright smile. "Good morning, Dorothy," she cheered. I squinted in the morning light. "Breakfast will be at 8 May." I blinked. 8 o'clock? In my old life, I would already have been up by 5:30, getting coffee and feeding chickens. Now, at 6:30, I was told to wait. This was a timetable, a regimen I had to follow. I tried to speak up at first. I said softly, "I used to wake up early. That clock, it's quite a bit earlier than what I'm used to." The nurse smiled sympathetically. "I know, dear. We all do this. It's safer for everyone." And just like that, I felt a lump of defeat settle in my throat. Another resident once said to me, "The day here starts when they open the dining room door." That's true. They decided my day, not me. It was the little things. Breakfast at 8, lunch at 12, dinner at 6, like clockwork. You might think that's nice, but it means I can't just decide on eggs at 10 a.m. if I feel like it, or stay up reading past 9 p.m. when I'm in the mood. Once I asked if I could have a sandwich at 10 in the evening because I wasn't sleepy yet. The nurse said, "I'll see," and she did bring me some crackers after a while. I felt guilty for even asking, but I was craving something normal, like how we used to have midnight snacks in my youth. Even restroom breaks have schedules. Back home, if I needed the bathroom in the middle of the night, I could tiptoe to it without knocking or calling. Here, I have a button on the bed to call someone if I need help. Once, at 2 a.m., I still thought I could walk myself. I tried quietly to get up, and whoosh, a nightlight clicked on, and a kind aide peeked in. "No need to rush, dear. Take your time," she said. I nodded, embarrassed, and she walked me there. In my mind, I wanted to argue, "No, I got this," but I ended up holding onto her arm. It hit me. I had become one of those people in the pictures who always follow a routine. It was done with kindness, but it felt like losing a little piece of myself. At home, I had a car with my name on it. Now my name is on the lip balm and toothbrush, but I have no keys. I can't go for a drive when I want. The first week, a nurse took me to the lobby to get the mail, out in the cold, and I caught a glimpse of my empty driveway. I felt a dull ache. Someone had my mailbox key, but my car keys were gone, and from that day on, gone with them. There are small moments when I notice the lack of choice. I once opened the fridge expecting to find a snack anytime, as I would at home, only to realize I had to wait for someone to bring it to me. Back home, I might add one more cookie for myself. Here, I ask, "May I have one more?" And that simple question feels heavy. Who knew that simply having the ability to decide was something I'd have to fight for? I caught myself longing for even the smallest acts of independence. One evening, I asked if I might wear my own slippers instead of those sterile socks. The nurse smiled and said, "Of course, dear." I thanked her for permission to tie my own laces. Another day, I mustered courage and said, "I'd like to walk outside a bit today, please." They agreed to take me down to the garden. When I stepped into the fresh air and felt the sun on my face, I felt more like myself for those minutes. Yet I had to ask, and I'll never forget that morning feeling of the world belonging to me. Sometimes I even miss scheduling the little things. My own baths and my bedtime. In my house, I could shower at 2 in the morning if I wanted to watch the rain. Here, I pick a time in the afternoon. When I first realized that, I remembered how I'd grumble to Jack. "They want to make me as boring as their routine." I laughed then, and I laugh now at myself for being grumpy about showers. I remind myself often that none of this is meant to hurt me. My children and the staff want me safe and well. But on quiet nights, I whisper to the darkness, care should not feel like captivity. I tell the aide on duty, "You know you're kind, but I feel a bit caged." She simply pats my hand and says, "We're just keeping you safe, Dorothy." I know she means well, but when I see young girls out in the world with their lives ahead, I sigh. They have freedom, and I have routines. That contrast, their freedom versus my schedule, is a truth I carry. Hard truth, too. The loneliness that never leaves. You would think having so many people around would banish loneliness, but nothing could be farther from reality. This second hard truth is that I feel alone even when I'm surrounded by others. Even in rooms filled with people, I have never felt as alone as I do here. During bingo or the weekend movie, we sit together but rarely truly connect. We share tables and watch the same TV programs, but I often feel like I'm in a silent movie, present but invisible. One volunteer night, a young girl sang softly to us. I clapped and smiled, but inside I was counting the hours until I'd sit alone again in my room. I remember sitting by the window one afternoon, watching a mother and child walk by outside the fence. The child laughed as they tumbled down the sidewalk. I found myself wishing I was that child, running free. Instead, an aide gently guided me back to my tray. Inside me, something heavy sat, because I realized I was more isolated than I ever thought I would be. Each evening, after the sun sets and the hallway grows quiet, I sit in silence. The ticking clock becomes loud in the stillness. Sometimes I find myself whispering, "Is anyone there?" But it's more a wish than a question. If a nurse passes by, I quickly mask my expression. "Good night." I smile as if anything has changed. Inside, I wonder if the walls remember me, because the people seem to have already forgotten. There are late nights when I call out quietly into the darkness, asking if there's anyone there. The ceiling doesn't answer, of course, but sometimes that makes me feel braver. I just needed to know I could still speak, even if no one was listening back. It reminds me I exist still. I also find myself longing for a kind word from a stranger. I started greeting every nurse I passed by name, and they'd smile and say hello back, like I was a real person and not just a number. Some days, that simple acknowledgement is all I live for, just someone noticing me, even in passing. I sometimes turn on a small lamp at night and speak into the darkness. "Good night, world," I might say softly. It's silly, but it feels like I'm connecting in a tiny way to the life outside these walls that I'm separated from. On long nights, the loneliness feels like someone is sitting next to me, but I know they're not. I'll curl under the blanket and feel the hollow next to me. I might reach out on my side of the bed and grasp at air, feeling the absence. It's a quiet grief. I pretend for a moment that maybe I can trick myself into thinking I'm not alone. There are late afternoons when I choose to join the knitting circle or card game, hoping to make a friend. I listen, smile, participate when I can. Sometimes it helps a little. Other times I leave early and feel I missed a chance. But I keep trying, because something in me hopes for connection, however small. I started keeping a little notebook of thoughts, as if writing letters to friends I love but can't see. I write things like, "Today the sky was so blue I thought of you," even though no one will read it. It helps a tiny bit just to spill my heart on those pages. Some nights I talk to myself about a day in my past, walking my dog at sunrise, making pancakes with my kids. I sometimes reply out loud, "Yes, that happened and you loved it." Then I gently remind myself to focus on the present. It's like I'm comforting an old friend. The friend is me. I sometimes wonder if other residents feel this too. We rarely mention it out loud. But one evening, Margaret, the sweet lady I told you about, looked at me and said, "Isn't it strange? We have all these people around, but sometimes I feel like the loneliest person in the world." I nodded, understanding without needing words. We held hands for a moment, and then went back to eating lunch. That silent handshake said more than any meal or medicine could. On holidays like Christmas or Easter, the home decor changes, the hymns play, and volunteers visit. But after they leave, the place goes quiet. On those nights, I crawl into bed and wonder if Santa will bring me family next time. Of course he won't, but I hang on to the belief that even in this loneliness, someone somewhere still cares for me. It's that hope that sometimes propels me to face the next day. So let me say this: you can sit among people all the time and still feel utterly, deeply alone. This is a truth I never expected. People outside tell me, "You have friends now, you live in a community," but community doesn't erase what's missing. It taught me that friendship and real connection don't automatically come with a new residence. You have to seek them, and even then they can be as elusive as shadows in the hallway. Hard truth 3. My past haunts me. The third truth is that my past is alive everywhere in here, following me around and haunting me. Everywhere I look, I see something I've lost. If I see a white kitchen countertop, I remember my marbled one at home. I smell disinfectant and think of cinnamon and apple pie from my kitchen. I once heard a dog barking outside and got excited. I expected Daisy, my golden retriever, to be jumping up at the door. She isn't here, of course. My house is empty now. Music is my sanctuary. A nurse arranged for an old record player once, and I nearly started humming Moon River when I heard it, even though it wasn't my vinyl. It reminded me of my wedding night. The first time the needle crackled, I swayed in my chair, nearly dancing. For a moment, I was in my living room dancing with Jack. Sometimes I still dance in my chair to melodies only I can feel, smiling. I keep a framed photograph of my grandchildren and my late husband on my bedside table. Every morning I pick it up. Sometimes I cradle it in bed. It's like talking to the past. When I smell the linen in this room, I faintly catch a whiff of their living room. It comforts me and breaks me at the same time. I love to tell stories from the past, and when someone finally asked me about my life, I began to share how I used to watch thunderstorms from my porch, or how I found Jack on the dance floor at 21. The volunteer said, "That's wonderful, Dorothy," and it warmed me because someone cared to listen. But afterwards, when I'm back in my room, all I have are the echoes of those stories in my head. Every day I wear a piece of my past, too. I brought my late husband's watch. I wind it each morning. Sometimes I pretend Jack is still here standing beside me, tying his tie, waving goodbye as I come to the car. I imagine he's waiting at the porch even now, humming our old song. These little acts keep him close in spirit. Memories are bittersweet here. The wallpaper doesn't have the flowers of my garden, but it's pretty, so I pretend it's the wisteria I planted. I see a vase of geraniums in the hallway, and I'm suddenly in my sunroom. I feel a tug when I recall the squeaky gate of my backyard. In my mind, I'm still stepping over that worn threshold, not starting a new one here. Music hour is my favorite. If they play Moon River or Frank Sinatra, I still tap my fingers or softly sway, thinking about my dancing days. Sometimes a song about young love comes on and I close my eyes, picturing that time with Jack. The staff play these old records because they know they remind us of home. I find peace in that, but also a yearning that lingers in every note. I talk to my reflection sometimes too. At home I knew my mirror's face well, each laugh line, each silver hair. Here, I still see Dorothy looking back. Some mornings I even give myself a pep talk. "You got this, girl. If my legs ache or if I wake sad." It sounds silly, but it's true. I still have to encourage the woman in that mirror. Even simple things haunt me. The ring I took off by accident this morning, the feel of my wedding band against skin. I realized with a pang I hadn't worn it for weeks. At home, I never took it off. Now I wear plastic bracelets they give me for medical reasons. I miss the weight of that ring. It was something I chose, not something they handed to me. I sometimes whisper to the photographs of the people I've loved and lost. I miss you, I say softly, imagining them smiling. No one else hears, but it makes me feel a little braver. It's like I'm reminding myself of who I was. A mother, a wife, a friend, so I don't let myself disappear in this place. Every day I remind myself that my memories cannot be taken. This room may not feel like home, but as long as I have these moments I've lived, I belong somewhere. Maybe not here in body, but in heart. I'm still Dorothy, the daughter of a farmer. Dorothy who sang lullabies. Dorothy who danced in her kitchen. Those parts of me will always be free, even if my days are now scheduled. Hard truth 4, death feels closer than ever. In this place, life and death sit side by side. The fourth hard truth is that death becomes a constant companion, something you can no longer ignore as easily as before. At home, when someone I knew died, it felt distant. Something that happened out in the world, far away. Here, in this community, it happens up close. When I first moved in, a friendly resident named Margaret sat at my side at lunch and told me a joke about her holiday. The next morning, I came down to breakfast, and her chair was empty. I asked a nurse, "Is Mrs. Johnson coming today?" The nurse's eyes softened. "I'm sorry, Dorothy. Mrs. Johnson passed away last night." I clutched my cup so hard it cracked. Just like that, someone who was there yesterday was gone. You learn quickly not to be stunned by it. There's an announcement board for birthdays and even one for memorials. When a resident dies, the director says a few words at chapel and lights a candle in their name. We sit together quietly, holding hands or hugging. It's awkward the first few times, but then you realize how valuable it is to have each other. We share that grief as our only community, and it binds us in silence and soft tears. I've seen grief and also grace. We had a chapel service and sang my favorite hymn. Afterwards, a young aide told me gently, "You sang that beautifully." I couldn't stop the tears. She nodded kindly and said, "I imagine you had a beautiful choir at home." I felt pride, and I felt sadness that the choir was no more. But in that moment, even in grief, I felt heard. In some ways, death here taught me to cherish life even more. Since living here, each sunrise feels like a little miracle. I wake up grateful simply to see that morning's light through the window. Some mornings I say a prayer just for the sun, thanking whoever I pray to for giving me one more chance. If it's cloudy, I whisper, "I'll take it anyway, thank you." I have a little notebook where I try to jot down things I'm grateful for. The warmth of a sunbeam, the softness of my blanket, a kind smile. When my friend told me her young son laughed this morning, I wrote, "Joy lives on." It helps me remember that the world still holds good even after I've lost people. Nighttime worries me less now. I still hope to fall asleep without fear, but I also plan for what I would want to say to my family if tomorrow turned out to be the last chapter. I wrote a letter that no one will see to my children, telling them how much I loved them. I wrote, "I'm so proud of you," over and over, as if writing it would make it true. It did make me feel better to pen those words, though I never gave it to anyone. I have come to accept that each day here might be my last, and if it is, I want to spend it peacefully. Maybe laughing at something silly, holding a hand, or looking at the sky. I've never been afraid to die, but I want it to come gently. My idea of heaven is sitting in my armchair at home one more time with Jack. I whisper to him, "I hope the room is ready when I get there." And in a way, I comfort myself with that thought. So this truth, life here can feel fleeting and yet profound. Every day is both a gift and a reminder. I often hear the phrase, "live for today." I do live for today. I say good morning to each new day and good night to each sunset. It doesn't erase fear, but it teaches gratitude. If this nursing home is a kind of shadow of home, I choose to focus on the light that filters through. Hard truth 5, I'm still me, even if I'm here. The fifth truth is something about resilience. I discovered that I'm still Dorothy underneath it all. It's almost a hopeful truth in a heavy story. I was once outspoken, stubborn, and a little sarcastic. Maybe not what you'd guess by looking at me now, but here I find that spark still lives inside. I realized quickly that living here couldn't erase the woman I was. Instead, it helped me cling harder to myself. For example, I always loved dressing up. On my first Sunday here, I wore my favorite sunflower scarf. Even though it's simple, it has bright yellow around my face. A nurse told me I brightened up the room. I don't know if they do that with everyone, but I felt like a star at church in that moment. It reminded me that a bit of style and joy is mine to keep, no matter where I live. I still cook in a way. I can't use a stove, but one afternoon I asked to help with dessert. They brought out bowls and let me add a sprinkle of cinnamon to the apples. The chef smiled and said, "Lady, you know your stuff." I felt like I was back in my kitchen, teaching someone to make apple pie. My hands might tremble, but my senses are alive with flavor. I talk a lot. The minute someone listens, I begin telling stories, sometimes too many. Once I joked, "You should start a blog, Grandma," at the volunteer. We both laughed. It reminded me I'm still the same Dorothy who loves to spin a tale. My humor, however quiet, is still intact here. I realized I'm not invisible just because I'm old. If someone tries to label me as frail or quiet, I gently resist. When they offered to press my clothes for me, I said no, I'm fine, and did it myself. If they jokingly asked if I wanted a pacifier, I'd retort, only if it's coffee. Those little rebellions, insisting on 2 pillows in bed, choosing the soup I like, remind me and those around me that Dorothy is still here, not just a resident. I even found ways to teach again. If a volunteer brings puzzles or word games, I eagerly jump in. I helped a young aide solve a crossword clue, and she exclaimed, "I can't believe how sharp you are." I smiled. When I was a school teacher, making others think was part of my joy. It still is. Music hour warms my soul. If they play Frank Sinatra or Elvis, you might see me tapping my feet or quietly humming along. I taught a fellow resident to tap out the rhythm with her cane. We felt young together, if just for a song. Our song and dance in our hearts was unmistakable proof that the old Dorothy still lives here. I don't hide that I want dignity. When a nurse called me dear too often, I corrected her kindly, and she apologized. Now she calls me Miss Dorothy. I felt a flicker of pride. I reminded the world I earned respect over a lifetime. No matter what room I'm in, I'll be the same person on the inside. Some nights, I still journal with a pen and paper the way I used to. I write letters I may never send. Last night, I wrote to Jack, "If you can see me now, know that I'm still dancing with memories." I held my hand on the page, feeling that despite everything, I'm dancing on. Music lifts my spirit here. One evening, I grabbed a tambourine and joined in singing an old hymn. I was 2 again, clapping and smiling. I realized I still love to dance, even if the steps are slower. When no one expects it, I've even stood up and did a little shuffle. We residents all laughed. It was a small victory, showing I still have some sass left. I even indulge in small things that make me feel alive. When they served leftover pie one day, I asked for a second helping, to everyone's amused surprise. It felt like reclaiming a bit of joy. After that, they started offering seconds to anyone with Grandma Dorothy's appetite. Through it all, I learned that even this place can't change the essence of who I am. I am Dorothy, brave, stubborn, loving, singing, sometimes stubborn, and still holding on to hope. I tell myself every morning, you're still you, just in a new room. Hard truth 6, regret and a bit of acceptance. This last one might sound strange, but it's about regret and also a tiny bit of acceptance. I regret, yes, a lot. I regret being here. Those words are hard to say, but they're true. I regret leaving my home. The key turning in that lock for the last time still echoes in my ears. I regret not clinging to those last quiet days in my own kitchen. I regret fighting with the kids when I was younger and not telling them I loved them enough in return. I regret not sitting on the porch in the spring a little longer. I regret some silly arguments, some wasted tears over small things. But along with that regret, I also find an odd comfort. It means I loved deeply. Each regret is a faint echo of something precious I held before. I regret not planting one last summer bouquet in the garden. That reminds me how beautiful those gardens were. Sometimes when I wake in the morning, I hold the bed rails and laugh to keep from crying. I worry whether I should have pushed to stay home a little longer or accepted this sooner. Every morning is a little wrestling match between why did it have to be now and you survived this long, count your blessings. It's exhausting, but it's my morning ritual. I've spent nights praying, not always for myself, but for family. Look after them, I whisper to the dark. It's my penance and my comfort. I told another resident one time, maybe we were never meant to be sad so much as grateful. We laughed in the kitchen, realizing we sound a bit crazy, but it felt true. Yet, I also try to accept each new day. I remind myself that if I hadn't moved here, I might not even be alive to regret anything. That fall last winter, as much as I hate how it happened, kept me safe here. It's a strange way of seeing a gift, so I still feel regret, but I carry it gently now. I will carry it when I lie here in bed, though I don't let it choke me. I tell myself, Dorothy, you've had a good life. Now make these last chapters count. Acceptance may not come easy, but it finds me when I say thank you quietly for this life. As different as it is, I may never have another chance to say these things aloud. I thank you for giving this old lady a moment to share her heart. Even after all this, I can't help hoping for small miracles. Maybe a phone call from my daughter out of the blue, or someone singing my favorite song on the radio. But I know miracles come in other forms too. A photo that makes me smile, a nurse who brings an extra warm blanket, or just having this conversation with you. These tiny gifts remind me to keep my heart open. I think of my regrets like old songs I keep humming. They have sweet parts and sad parts. I try to cherish the sweet bits even when I'm humming in a minor key. And if you're listening, perhaps remember this: even an old woman with aches and regrets can still have hope. As I lie here, I still dream of jasmine blooming outside, of laughter at a family dinner. And when morning comes, I see sunlight through the window and thank the light for another chance. Thank you for sitting with me this long, for letting my heart speak. In sharing these truths, I feel a little lighter. I never expected to speak so openly at my age, but I'm glad I did. We all have stories and lessons, and sharing them can bring us a bit closer. I think I've shared enough for one night. A piece of my story will stay here with you. Good night, and may we all find a bit of peace wherever we rest. I may be finished speaking for tonight, but my story will live on a little in your thoughts. Every old woman has stories, and this is one of mine. I may never say all of this out loud otherwise. Thank you again for staying with me tonight. Good night, and take care of each other. Truly, good night. Share this with someone you love. Let's walk strong together. Subscribe, like, comment, stay strong.